In this video, we'll explore the question of what Agile is, how it differs from Scrum and other frameworks, and why it matters. Agile first started being used to describe a software development approach in 2001, when 17 process inventors spent 2 days together at the Snowbird Ski Resort in the Rocky Mountains of the United States. They thought that perhaps if they worked together, they might have a bigger impact in changing how software was built than they could working on their own. During those 2 days and a bit of follow-up, they agreed on 3 things. First, they agreed that they would call this family of related approaches Agile. Second, they agreed on a set of values they shared. And third, they agreed on the set of principles that were common to all of their approaches. We will use the metaphor of a funnel to illustrate how Agile values, principles, and practices are related. At the top of the funnel, we have the 4 values. The values are the heart of Agile. Next come the 12 principles, which help describe some useful guidelines on Agile thinking. Finally, we have the many practices used by Agile teams and organizations. We'll come back to the funnel illustration later, but let's get back to the meeting where these things all coalesced. The output of that meeting was published on a website, which you can still visit today at agilemanifesto.org. Let's take a look at the introductory sentence from that website. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Notice that they did not write, we have uncovered, but we are uncovering. The author's context of software development is one of high complexity and uncertainty, which requires an ongoing process of uncovering, experimenting, learning, and discovering. We explore complexity further in the Scrum Theory and Cynefin videos. Second, these things were being uncovered by doing it and helping others do it, not by theorizing. Agile approaches are grounded in experienced practitioners experimenting with better ways of doing work. The Agile Manifesto was originally about software development, and so you will see a software-specific focus in some of what they wrote. However, in the many years that have followed, Agile approaches have been successfully used in the management of all kinds of work, in diverse industries like hardware manufacturing, new product development, and service delivery, and different domains like marketing, sales, human resources, and more. Agile approaches have been successful in improving how work gets done. Agile is a management discovery made by software developers that can be successfully applied to the world of work at large. For those viewing this video who are working in some other context besides software development, feel free to substitute your type of work in and see if the values and principles still make sense to you. Let's next take a look at the 4 values. The authors wrote that, through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Let's briefly examine each of these 4 value pairs. First, I find it telling that a group of process inventors and tool vendors stated that they value individuals and interactions more than processes and tools, and that they put this value first in the list. It highlights that Agile is a way of thinking about how people work together. It is human-centric, not process-centric. I have found that organizations that demonstrate this value in how they work are 80% of the way to achieving an Agile approach. The second value pair is working software over comprehensive documentation. This value leads to one of the Agile myths, which sounds something like this. Hey, we're Agile, we don't need to write any documentation. This is a misunderstanding of the statement. The statement simply means that we value getting some product done so that we can capture some value and get some feedback, rather than spend more and more time in analysis paralysis, writing documents predicting what we should do. One gives us value and the capability to get good feedback, the other doesn't. I find it useful to think of 2 categories of documentation, predictive and descriptive. In a complex environment, predictive documentation has minimal value in that it will almost certainly be wrong to some extent, and because it doesn't provide any value to the customer. Descriptive documentation, on the other hand, is written along with or just after the development of the product to describe what it actually does. This type of documentation is unlikely to be wrong and is likely to be valuable to internal or external stakeholders and customers. Next up, we have customer collaboration over contract negotiation. This value pair is about shifting the relationship between the people doing the work and the people for whom the work is done. In many businesses, this relationship is adversarial, win-lose, at opposite sides of the proverbial table. In an Agile environment, the relationship is seen as collaborative, win-win, sitting around a table. This doesn't mean that contracts go away in Agile. It does mean that the contract, whether written or just implied, is intended to capture a shared understanding of outcomes and goals, not something to be argued over, a tool to ensure we can penalize each other if anything unexpected comes up. Finally, we have responding to change over following a plan. This value pair also has some myths associated. Hey, we're Agile, we don't have a plan. That's not good Agile. As Dwight D. Eisenhower is quoted, "I have always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." If this quote resonates with you, it is probably because you have found the activity of planning allows us to get aligned on important goals and outcomes, and to think through the different paths we might take to achieve them. However, once we move from planning to executing the work, we should adapt the plan as soon as and as frequently as we learn more. Next, let's take a look at the 12 principles in the Agile Manifesto. The first 3 principles focus on how to delight customers. The next 3 focus on the team and how they do their work. The next 2 principles focus on how we view progress through an Agile lens. The next 3 describe how to ensure we are building the right thing, the right way. And the final principle is about continuous improvement. Those familiar with the Lean movement, based on the Toyota production system, will notice quite a few similarities between the Agile principles and Lean thinking. Let's now return to the funnel illustration. By now, it is becoming clear that Agile is really a way of thinking about how we do work. Agile is often described as a mindset, and that mindset is described by the values and principles. We call the end of the funnel practices. These are the concrete things that Agile individuals, teams, and organizations do. One example of an Agile practice is a sprint retrospective, a regularly scheduled event where a team inspects and adapts their system of work. A sprint retrospective is a practice from Scrum, which is a collection of several Agile practices that work particularly well together. A collection of practices that works well together in a particular context is often referred to as a framework. Scrum is a framework that works particularly well in the context of building something new, like a new product, new features in an existing product, or a new service offering. While Scrum is the most well-known Agile framework, there are other Agile frameworks that work particularly well in different contexts. One example, Extreme Programming, or XP for short, is an Agile framework that works particularly well in the context of software engineering. Another example, Kanban, works particularly well when work can't be planned, like providing support and other on-demand services. Most organizations will start with one of the common Agile frameworks and focus on doing it well. Over time, they might start to blend practices from multiple frameworks together. For example, teams that develop software products often find value in combining practices from XP and Scrum. Teams that build new features in an existing product, as well as providing on-demand support for that product's customers, might combine practices from Scrum and Kanban. Other teams might create new practices that are aligned with Agile values and principles. Since the practices are part of the ongoing "we are uncovering better ways" nature of Agile, there are really an infinite number of combinations that might be used. It all depends on the context of the work being done.